Yeah, for sure.
All right, here we go. Okay, so first question. What was the giant you faced and how long did you face it for?
So the biggest giant I ever faced was definitely my drug addiction. And I faced it for 7 years and it like grew and grew and built and built. So it started, how old are you?
15.
Okay, yeah. So it started when I was 16 until I was 23 or 24. Yeah, 23. Yep. And it was sort of like the more I got into, the worse it got. So 7 years of a steady climb or decline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then number two, what caused it to come into your life?
So that was definitely just not understanding like my worth as a human being. Um, just growing up, I always felt like I wasn't good enough all the time, like everybody was better than me, and that I just really had no like worth. And I think that's just a setup for a lot of problems. At least to be like, I was always trying to be like everybody else just because I didn't see what was cool about me. Um, and I was always looking for something to sort of like fill that void. And for a long time, it was people. So I would just like look at all my
Hmm.
friends at school and try to act like them. And then that would make me feel like I'm good enough. And then finally, that turned into trying to find boyfriends that would make me feel better. And then I picked bad boyfriends because I didn't know my worth. And they are the ones that introduced drugs into my life. And so I tried it more just to like still, like for me, when I was your age, when I had boyfriends and stuff, I would change how I am in order for them to like me more, which is a huge fail. People don't like when you change yourself. They like you to be yourself. And so I was always changing
Yeah.
myself to be like them. And then yeah, so it's sort of like the common what's it called? Um I can't think of the word. But anyway, yeah, I did it because of them. And yeah, I would say that's definitely the biggest reason the giant came into my life for sure. Yeah.
Okay. What were you doing while you're confronted by the giant, like your job or living situation and stuff like that?
hmm So when I was confronted, I was at school. I was 16. I started working at Corner Bakery. And that was when I kind of like started meeting people out in the world and changing myself to be more like them. Um, and I always did like pretty well. I always like kept a job, kept going to school. I was always trying to like be good enough and then still like doing drugs and going downhill. Um, and then like when I was really confronted with overcoming the giant was when I was 23, and by that time I was living in like a drug house that was disgusting, like covered in like cigarette butts and needles and dirty and dark and gross. Like scary like drug addict prisoner guys coming in and out selling drugs and stuff. Just a horrible place. And I was married because I'd gotten married in my addiction. And that's when I was really like just not doing well. And I realized like, okay, I don't want this anymore. I have to like defeat this. This is over. And I started reaching out to God. So yeah, I was just married in a really bad place. And I started reaching out to God at that point for help.
Yeah, so that brings me to the next one. What was the turning point in facing this giant?
Okay, yeah. So the turning point for me was just like, it was weird. It was like all of a sudden I'd made it this far and it was like this bad. And it occurred to me, I like remembered being like 13 and being like, I never thought my life would turn out like this. I was just finally thinking the right thoughts. Like no one would have expected that I turned out like this because I was in like a good family, like a Christian home. I like got all A's. I always did really well. I was always very kind and polite. Like you were not, like I was not that kid that would turn out like this. And so it just occurred to me that like I hate my life and I need help. And it was sort of like I always knew like God was there. Like I just remember no matter where I was in my darkness, like I always knew God was there. I never stopped believing that because I always sort of like felt like there's this light somewhere like waiting. And so for me, it was just realizing, okay, I need to start reaching out to God because I hate my life.
Oh yeah, okay. And then, so what caused you to like conquer the giant? Like,
hmm So yeah, that I definitely just attribute to searching for God. Like at that point, I was like, okay, I'm going to go to a Bible study. And that's like all I knew. And I had purple hair and like piercings all over. And I was like 50 pounds lighter than this, like skinny. And I was on heroin. And I was just showing up to this Bible study every day and listening and learning. And that didn't really take away my addiction. But I was really excited about it. I was like, okay, this is like, I'm feeling loved again. I feel like I'm hearing truth. This is really resonating with me. And this is what I want. And so I just kept going. And I feel like the love of the people around me is really what kept me there. I was just like I love this. Because at home it was like dark, scary, angry, everyone's fighting. It was horrible. So I'd go there and be like, oh, I'm loved. This is great. And so, yeah, it started there. And then I ended up going to like telling somebody that I was on heroin. I went to a Bible study for 7 months, not telling anybody I'm on drugs, but just going. And then in the group, we learned, it was kind of like a step group, but it wasn't like a Alcoholics Anonymous type thing. But the steps were like believing that God exists, believing that he cares for you. And then the third step was believing that he has the power to take away your addiction. And I remember that was like a big step for me where I was like, okay, wait, I need to believe that he can take this away. And so it just clicked. I'm like, okay, if God is real and he created everything, then he for sure could take away my addiction. I know it. And so I just like believed that and surrendered it over. I was like, okay, God, I give this to you. If you're real, take it away. And so after that, I didn't like notice any change because every day since then, it was like, I need heroin or I'm going to die type of thing. It was just, that's how I felt. That's why I couldn't stop. And it is really painful to stop. And so the next day, my then husband came home with drugs or with heroin, and he's in front of me with it. And usually I would just be like dying for it, like anxiety, I need it, feeling, that addiction feeling. And then that day it was like this like peace and warmth and like fuzzy feeling came over my whole body, and I never wanted to use ever again. And I was like, oh my gosh, like God is real. I can't even believe it, because it was tangible. It was like usually I'd be feeling anxiety and stress, but it was like this tangible peace and joy and like warmth, and it never went away. And I never wanted to do drugs ever again. And so from that point on, I was like, wow, this is real. This is crazy real. And so that kept me going that direction. So without God, I could not have overcome the giant. So it's kind of a David and Goliath story.
Yeah.
I would say. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So next question, what are you doing now that the giant is out of your life?
What am I doing now? So now, kind of circle back to like when I was young, I didn't believe I had any worth or value. I think after the giant, it's like, it was this learning of like who I am, that I do have worth, that I do have value, that I'm actually very cool, you know, like, I think that's something I want all kids to know, like they're super awesome, just how they're made, you know, and they have a lot to like offer. And so I think that's what I learned. So now I'm making art. So you see my art right here.
Yeah.
Because I was always an artist. So now I've been just working on my art full time. I have 2 really beautiful daughters. I am married to a really wonderful man who is awesome, and living in like my dream house. That's another thing. I'm living in this like crazy big beautiful house like 2 blocks away from the drug house where I used to live. And I'm like, I don't know how I got here. This is crazy. So yeah, it's been great overcoming it. Yeah.
Last question, what have you learned from facing this giant?
So what have I learned? I think what I've learned most of all is that like God will help you with anything. And I know this isn't like a church thing right now, but that's what I learned.
Yeah.
I just learned that like no matter what you're facing, like God will help you with it, and that he's real and he does things and he's active in your life if you believe. And so that's sort of how I face everything now. I feel like I can really overcome and conquer anything because I know I'm never alone and I can be helped. And also just believing that for other people. I feel like I've learned to really like see the best in other people instead of seeing, I think when I was young, I would see bad kids as bad. But I sort of learned bad kids are not bad. They just believe bad things about themselves and they make bad choices. So they just have bad circumstances that made them believe bad things about themselves. And so I think it's just given me a better, well-rounded look at the world and how people behave. So yeah, that's my answer.
Okay, thank you.
Cool, you're welcome.